So my name's Steve Allison. I look after audience and data technologies, which is the interesting part of Martech at the moment, what with cookieless and migrations away from DMPs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'll throw in some TLAs every now and again. If I say something completely unintelligible, please stop me and I'll happily explain what I mean. So let's start with that word that we as an industry just love. Personalization. We've heard it several times already today. We keep talking about personalization. For the last few years, many of us have made personalization the main focus of our engagement with customers. B2C, definitely, but increasingly now B2B, kind of following that same kind of idea that these are people we're talking to. Therefore, I need to get right message, right piece of content, right format, on the right screen at the right time in order to help progress them down the journey that we want them to take. What personalization kind of does for us. Except, if I was going to be controversial, I'd say that for the last few years, although we've talked a heck of a lot about personalization, actually what we've been doing is extremely good targeting. And there's a technical reason for that. Most of the time we've been using personalization and we've been using things like DMPs, data management platforms. They don't tell you anything about a person. They tell you about a segment at that point in time. Really useful, and you can get some really relevant content in front of people, but it's not personalization. Okay, it doesn't know the person. That is one of the main changes that we see coming down the line now. People matter. And that's important because we also fundamentally believe that people don't buy products, they buy the experience. For most of us, we don't sell something that's totally unique, which means there are options, other places to go. Why do they choose us? Because of the brand, what the brand represents, the experience, how we got to that point where they bought it. So we kind of differentiate between an experience and personalization. So personalization is that point in time where you get everything right for that person. And you'll do it on the web. You'll do it on the app. You'll do it in the call center if you're joined up. And you have these individual points of personalization. As they come together over time, and form that story that we're taking them on, that we're helping our customers to go down, that's the experience. So personalization works within that umbrella of the experience that we want to create for people. That's really important. And it's really important because our customers now are all over the place, literally. The way that they buy things has changed. We are all digital companies now. We're all digital first. There are loads of different channels, devices, places where they get information, some of which we can go into and directly interact with them there, some of which we can't. It's a bit of a black box and we chuck stuff in and hope it sticks and they come out the other end and come and visit us. That cycle changes. If I want to build an experience now, I've got to think about coordinating all of this different stuff. Coordinating it, orchestrating it, making sure that my personalization works on each of those different platforms. The problem is, these days, if you throw in, not just all of those different channels that we have to talk to them, but throw in things like cookieless. How do I identify people? Are they going to be bothered to log in every time they come to me? Am I going to get any information out of the walled gardens? What we tend to find is people start to fade in and out of our corporate view. Sometimes we'll know exactly, Steve Allison is here, he's doing this right now. Other times it'll just be an anonymous user. So we need to try and work out, okay, how do I string together all of these different things to understand this person, whether or not I can go, yeah, it's Steve, or whether I go, it might be Steve, or whether I go, well, I've got no idea who it is, but they're following the pattern of that user journey that we want them to take, and therefore start to use that as the personalization for the next step. Technology is one of the solutions to this. Technology is actually changing a lot at the moment to allow us to start to address some of these problems. And it is a shift, not just the DMPs to CDPs, they are got in my TLAs. It's all about this idea of moving from third party, from buying audiences, from buying and reading cookies and that kind of stuff, towards the first party data. What do I know about you from your interactions with me on all of those different channels? How do I use that not just to react, but to proactively go out there and do something with you? Technology has changed tremendously to allow us new opportunities to do some of this stuff. And that's important. We all know cookieless, first thing we need to do is get that first-party data into place and we can start to collect that. Are cookies going to totally disappear? No, they're not. It won't matter. If you are engaged in a sales cycle with a customer, that cookie will stay there for the duration of that sales cycle. It does get refreshed. But there are better ways of doing this. What we need to start thinking about is not just where am I getting my data, but the mindset about how I'm going to use that data. Data. We all talk about data as well. So that's probably the second favorite word of us all. Get me some data on that subject. Do we want data? Or do we want to know about the people, the audiences, the segments? Do we need to resolve that data down to actually something that's far more useful for us? And I'll argue that we probably do need to start thinking about that. So a lot of us started out with point solutions in our Martech stack. Point solutions that do email campaigns or that do on-site personalization or analytics or whatever it might be. And point solutions are brilliant because they do that job. Point solutions are also quite painful sometimes because the ingredients that go into making that point solution do its job really well are very rarely unique. So what we're seeing now is people starting to think about, okay, what about CX platforms? Everyone heard of CX, customer experience platforms? Everyone familiar with that acronym? Fantastic. So we're starting to see now, people starting to look at CX platforms going, okay, certain things are core to everything that I have, every piece of technology I have. Data collection. They all need data collecting. Why not collect it in one place and feed all those others? Identity management. This is one of the huge questions. I'll talk more about that later on. Profiles follows on. If I know who you are, I should start building a profile, know you as a person. Segmentation, again, it's one of those tools that almost every piece of Martech does segmentation. How useful is that? I mean, it's awesome when you want to get a job done, but from an organization's point of view, many of us actually want to define it once and then reuse that wherever we need to, any other business system that we want. Make efficiencies. How am I understanding people and moving them through my sales cycle if they're in different segments or through that different applications that I've got up? So putting this stuff into the CX layer where we can start to look at privacy, governance of that data, consent, because that's the reason we're in this pickle with cookies in the first place, because we didn't think hard enough about that. The reporting. We talk a lot about real time. Right here, right now, what should I personalize for you? Right here, right now, what are you doing that I can customize it for? Right here, right now, you want to know whether this stuff is actually working or not. So it's not just about engaging with the customers, it's about the back-end systems. Do they know that that information is changing in real time so you can know immediately what is and what is not working? AI is also a huge part, and again, I'll come and talk about that in a moment. But the destinations, how do I share data? Any fans of Frank Herbert's Dune? The spice must flow. In our case, the data must flow. The days when a vendor can come along and go, install my tags, I'll collect it, I will do magic, and then I will hand that magic out to everything else. You can't do that anymore. Data has to flow at the speed at which you capture that data. And that leads to actually quite an exciting opportunity. The long-term evolution of those technologies is probably along the lines of microservices based off your CX platform. So first of all, the CX platform is not about the data. Obviously it is. But your data lives in those business systems where you have it, in your CRM systems, in your data warehouse, in your data lakes, everything else. Fantastic. That's where data lives. What we want in the CX platform is a cache of that data. So in real time, I can look up and execute that data. I can take data from any of these sources, recombine it, merge it, create new data sets, new applications, new workflows, new user journeys, without having to re-architect this back-end stuff. So that's a long-term vision for kind of where we're going, where the industry is going sort of technologically with regard to CX platforms. We reckon there are 4 main areas of interest. The first of those is that data collection. I know, it's an unsexy area, but actually the technical changes that have happened in data collection at the moment are actually quite exciting, and I will hopefully make you aware of that in a moment. Identity. cookies, primary use of a cookie was so that you can go, this person's come back again. You can continue the story. You can identify them. You can start to know something and progress them. Identity management is going to be the real trick to solve over the next year and a half before Google starts actually deleting those cookies out of the browsers. So that's one area we've got to get absolutely right. Hand in hand with that comes governance. What have they consented for? How do I control the use of that data downstream? How do I manage and make sure that I'm not leaking data anywhere, but still making the maximum use of that data? And lastly, machine learning. And you might be surprised at seeing machine learning there, but if you think about the anonymous users, okay, there are going to be many more anonymous users contacting your systems. It's going to be the people that you just don't know about, the people who can't be bothered to log in, the people who click the no, don't want to share any data on their iOS devices. All of those people, we need to manage them. We still need to personalize for them. Machine learning actually today is pretty bloody good at predictive personalization, at being able to make a really good stab at what to do with that person next. So that's increasingly going to become an area that will manifest itself inside of all of our Martech. So let's have a look at these in a bit more detail. Any techies in the audience? Okay, a few of you. Awesome. I used to be a techie, so I like to have diagrams reminiscent of the good old days before I became a marketer. Data. Data has changed totally. Okay? In the old days, a DMP would typically collect what's going on, what's happening. It will bring that in. It will process that data, segment your audiences, and push that information out in 12 hours, if you're lucky. 12 hours. Jeepers. What can you do on the internet in 12 hours? Yeah? Don't answer that. We can change that now. The speed at which we can grab data, the speed at which we can see things happening, we need to be able to push that to every system that needs that piece of information. When an email campaign is successful and someone clicks and opens it, it's not just the email system that needs to know that. Your ad suppression for Google or Facebook or whatever also needs to know that, so it doesn't start showing ads for something you've already responded to. Other systems need that data, so we need to be able to take that and simultaneously feed it anywhere in the architecture that you want it. So one of the big technical changes is the fact that we can now do that in milliseconds. Collect data, share it. The spice must flow. The data must flow anywhere that it's needed. But it's not just about capturing the data. We can actually process the data in flow now. For you technical people, I'm talking about snowflakes, I'm talking about Kafkas, I'm talking about all that exciting new technology that we've got that enables us to do things like streaming segmentation. As you click on different things in the stream, before it even gets home, I'm going to resegment you. So that the time it hits Google or Facebook or whatever your destination is going to be for your advertising, it already has the latest, the greatest segment that you belong to, and you are always going to be, almost always going to be on target with that next ad, that next piece of content, that next personalization decision that you make. So those are two big changes. Pushing the data anywhere it's needed and processing the data, including things like machine learning, propensity scores, churn, anomaly detection, fraud detection. On the edge, as people are clicking away stuff, it's recalculating all of these machine learning algorithms. Speed. It's about being able to respond faster. And that helps, obviously, with the notoriously short attention spans of our customers on the web, but also helps us to be able to actually engage them in the moment that we've always talked about, but never really had the right kind of technology to deliver on that promise. Okay, so first thing is that data changes. The second thing then is the profile. Data is most useful when data is resolved to a person. This is the CDP kind of concept. Are you familiar with CDPs, customer data platform? Yeah, cool. So this is kind of that idea. The idea that I am, again, caching, this isn't the golden record. I'm caching all the data that I need to understand who this person is with any identity that they might want to use. So any identity that you have with data coming in, we can match up to that person. Any identity that you want to use when we push that data out, you can use any identity that you want. Identity is no longer a thing. People often ask us, how do I get a single identity? We're like, why? On the web, you can do one internally in your organization. You can have a gold master, and your CRM system will probably provide that. But once you go out into the wild, wild web, there are hundreds, there will be hundreds always of different IDs. God's sake, we would love to be the ID in the web. So would Facebook, so would Google, so would any other person. It's not going to happen. There will always be loads of identities. So managing them deterministically allows us to map that data to the person. Okay, that's the boring stuff. The interesting stuff is on the right-hand side of this, what we call experience events. That is a time series of everything you do with a customer and a customer does with you. So now think about your segmentation. As you're segmenting, you can know, oh, they came on the website and they did A, B, and C. They opened an email that was about F. They went into the shop and talked to someone who used their loyalty card buying product Y. All of those things in sequence. So the next time they visit my webpage, I can go, okay, don't need that, don't need that. That's the thing that I need to press them on, and I can start to move them forward in that discussion. True personalization. To the customer, it might not mean anything. They might not see something, but that next piece of content will be that much more relevant because we've got that sequencing, because we're in time. We're having a conversation that progresses over time because we know what's going on there. And that might include clever little stuff like content affinities. What works best? What kind of colors does Steve Allison like in his emails that he actually clicks on? What kind of language do I respond to? If I know that, again, I can make better decisions in my individual personalizations. So all of this profile stuff helps me, A, to understand my data as people, but also then to enable me to progress that conversation with those people as we interact with them on all of those different channels. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. I mentioned that governance was the key thing around this. Okay. The whole problem with cookies was, no one knew what was in them. Anyone could read them. People blindly either went, yes, I'll take it, and had no idea what that meant, or they'd go no, and it kind of scuppered your ability to do any kind of personalization with them. Consent matters. There will be a big rebalancing of the relationship between brands and their customers. Many times we have asked, as vendors and as businesses, for data from our customers. And what did we do with that data? Hi, Steve. Welcome back. Awesome. It's not real personalization. It's not engaging me. It's not relevant to me. It might not be deep personalization that we need, but if I know what data I need in order to do my job, if I get your consent, if I can show that there is a reason why I'm using that data, our evidence shows that people actually will sign up, will start to give information, trickle it through, don't ask for it all up front, but collect it as you need that data, and make sure that the data and the consent flow to the same place at the same time. So that helps us with that downstream usage of that data. So what we've got then is data coming in really fast so we can see what's going on, and we can know segmentation and that kind of stuff really quickly. We've resolved that down to people, and we know what that person has actually consented to in the use of their data. That's the perfect food for machine learning. If we want to do personalization at scale, one-to-one personalization, hyper-personalization, all those other buzzwords that you know and love, we need to start thinking about how machine learning is going to operate. Machine learning far too often is removed. It's a back-end process. It's a back-office process. Actually, if we can do things like propensity scoring, attribution monitoring, because if we lose cookies, attribution is going to be a real pain to try and track. If we use machine learning to do this kind of stuff, working on that data that is happening really quick, that we know we've got consent for, that is already cleaned and mapped to that person because we've got the identity management going on, it makes using machine learning far more powerful and gives us those insights that we need far quicker so that we can start to use those. So the sixth platform, if you like, the whole idea behind that, and one of the reasons why it's becoming more important to people's tech stacks, is it collects data that you explicitly ask for, the first-party data. It then resolves that to people. So we know who it is. If I know who you are and I know what segment, I can choose the right user journey to take you on. If I can put you down the right user journey, we know personalization works. There are loads of stats that prove that. It's just getting everything in the right order to continue that process so that we can achieve the goals that we can possibly do so on any channel that we interact with. So 3 takeaways. Firstly, data flows. Data must flow. It cannot belong to any vendor. It cannot belong to any system. It needs to be able to flow throughout all the systems that need it. And more importantly, when you're sharing that data, it's sharing it as data resolved to a person. That's the people that matter, not necessarily just the generic data for its own sake. Secondly, a profile, whether it's a CDP officially or whether it's a CRM system that can activate on digital channels or however you have it, the profile is going to become the real core part of your strategy going forward for engaging with customers. That also allows us to map in the consent against all of that data. So whenever we use that data, we know that we are actually allowed to use that data. And finally, that then allows us to understand what we are doing with them, the conversation that we're having on all of those different channels, so that we are now better orchestrated, better coordinated, and each individual personalization decision we make is actually moving them, nudging them towards a decision that is good for the customer and good for us as a business. I hope that makes sense. Any questions before I hand over?